Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone, and to all of you who are watching my demo. So, the topic that I chose is the genres of poetry. So, in my research, there are three types of genres of poetry. First one is the dramatic. The second one is narrative, and the third one is the lyrical poetry. So, let's start with the narrative poetry. So, it is a genre of poetry that tells a story. So, narrative is telling a story from the beginning until the end. The poem is usually telling a story. So, it is typically this can be read aloud and will maintain the audience's attention due to their rhythmic movement. This form describes important events in life, either real or imaginary. So, what do we mean by this one? So, events in life, it means that it is everyday happenings or everyday events that is happening in our life. So, authors of note in this category include Edgar Allan Poe, Roald Dahl, Ernest Vincent Millay, Alfred Lord Tennyson, William Wordsworth, Geoffrey Chaucer, Edwin Arlington Robinson. So let's look for an example of a narrative poetry. So first one is the Ballad of the Harp Weaver by Ernest Vincent Millay. So let me read it for you. Son, said my mother, when I was knee-high, you've need of clothes to cover you, and not a rag have I. There is nothing in the house to make a boy breeches, nor shears to cut a cloth with, nor thread to take stitches. There's nothing in the house but a loaf end of rye, and a harp with a woman's head nobody will buy, and she began to cry. So, this poem is all about the story of the mother and the son who is living in poverty, and that there is enough food. They do not have enough food to spare, drink and food to spare, and a house to live in. So, The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. So this poem is all about the mystery. It the raven symbolizes the mournful or never-ending remembrance, or the the death of the author's loved one. So, types of narrative poetry are ballad, a poem similar to a folk tale which uses a repeated refrain. This means that every few stanzas, a portion of the poem is repeated much like a song. So, the ballad is there are variations of ballad. First one is love ballads, or ballads and sea ballads, numerous moral and historical or mythical ballads. So, another types is epic. Our keyword in epic here is that it tells a story of a hero. So, one famous example of this epic is the Biag of Lamang. Another is stories like Odyssey or Ben-Hur. Next is dramatic poetry. Dramatic poetry encompasses a highly emotional story that's written in verse and meant to be recited. So, of course, dramatic poetry is meant to be recited. So, it usually tells a story or refers to a specific situation. This would include closet drama, dramatic monologue, and rhyme verse. A dramatic poetry is a drama written to be Dramatic poetry is a drama written in verse. So in short, a dramatic poetry it is meant to be recited and written in verse or spoken or sung. Usually this dramatic poetry is meant to be sung. So another note, authors of note in this category include William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, Ben Jonson, Pedro Calderon de la Barca, Robert Browning, Sylvia Plath, and James Joyce. So, example here is the My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. So this poem is discussed in our um, previous subjects. So it is all about the sun. It is all about the um, it is all about the Duchess who the Duke who has a high pride, and he wants to he is telling bad things, bad words to his wife. So there are kinds of dramatic poetry. First one is comedy. This form usually light and written with the purpose of amusing and usually has a happy ending. So a comedy is I know all of you know that, and so let me rephrase it. And so comedy is happy ending. For example is Shakespeare, The Tempest, As You Like It, another of Shakespeare comedies. So The Tempest by Shakespeare, it is not a comedy, but it ends happily. Another one is tragedy. A tragedy is a story that ends unhappily, for example. So the tragedy is a keyword there is ends unhappily. For example, is the Hamlet, Hamlet and the Romeo and Juliet, and the Crucible. So the third types of genres of poetry is the lyric poetry. It is especially song-like and emotional, usually short, simple, and easy to understand. Lyric poetry focuses more on personal emotions, attitudes, and the author's state of mind. So what do we mean by this? So it is all about the um, it focus more on targets the emotions or the attitudes of the author or a person. Authors of note in this category include William Shakespeare, Christine de Pizan, Teresa of Avila, Antonio Machado, T.S. Eliot, and John Keats. So, for example, so How Do I Love Thee by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. So let me read it for you. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height. My soul can reach when feeling out of sight. For the ends of being an ideal grace. I love thee to the level of everydays. Most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for life. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion of put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I sing to love. With my lost sins, I love thee with a breath. Smiles, tears of all my life, and if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. So, um, this poem it is purely a love of the wife to his husband, to her husband. So there are types of lyric poetry. The first one is elegy. It is a poem of mourning or reflection on the poet of an individual. So her keyword in the elegy it is more on mournful or reflection on death, or it pertains to a death of someone, of loved ones, or anything that is death that you can mourn or reflect to. Another type of lyric poetry is ode. A serious or thoughtful poem usually with a formal structure. This type of poem is generally seen as a way to pay homage to a thing or person. This type of lyric is the most popular and includes the subgenre of sonnets. So, our keyword here is it is a serious or a thoughtful poem. So when you write a poem, you can so in the ode when writing a poem, it should be you have to be serious and you have to think of what what would what would the readers want to receive in your poem. So next one is sonnets. This is a lyric poem of 4 feeling or an idea. These are two types, the Italian and the Shakespearean. So, this sonnets, I know some of you are familiar with the works of William Shakespeare. Those are examples of Shakespearean poem. So that's it, my presentation, and thank you for listening. And if you have questions you want to clarify with my presentation, you can ask it in our GC. Thank you and God bless.